The world's militaries mobilized with surprising speed, but their responses lacked the perfect coordination the Vraxians expected from a worthy adversary. This wasn't the choreographed defense the aliens had encountered on other worlds. This was chaos incarnate. Colonel Maya Reyes watched from the Pentagon's Emergency Command Center as screens displayed real-time footage from around the globe. The Chinese were deploying hypersonic missiles. The Russians had activated their northern electromagnetic defense grid. The Indian Air Force was scrambling fighters with experimental countermeasures. "They're all using different protocols," she muttered. "We need coordination." General Winters shook his head. "Communications are still scrambled beyond regional levels. Everyone's working with what they have." On screen, a Vraxian light cruiser hovering over London was taking damage from antiquated Eurofighter jets using tactics that seemed random to the point of recklessness. The pilots were improvising, flying patterns that defied standard military doctrine. "The aliens are struggling to predict our attack vectors," said Reyes. "Look at their defensive positioning. They're calibrating for patterns that aren't there." Across the world, humanity's disjointed response was creating an unexpected advantage. The Japanese Self-Defense Force was deploying experimental sonic weapons, while Brazilian Special Forces used jungle warfare tactics against Vraxian ground troops in São Paulo. Nothing connected these strategies except human ingenuity. In orbit, the Vraxian Subnexus 8 observed the unfolding resistance with growing concern. The neural link to the Overmind pulsed with confusion. "Their military units fight without central coordination," 8 reported. "Each group employs different tactics, technologies, and even objectives." The Overmind's response vibrated through the link. "Impossible. No species achieves spaceflight without unified command structures." 8 directed the collective consciousness to observe a particularly puzzling situation in Kenya, where wildlife rangers were guiding regular army units through savanna landscapes, using tracking skills honed on poachers to ambush Vraxian scouts. They adapt individually. Each human appears capable of independent tactical assessment. The Overmind dismissed this observation. "They are simply disorganized. Increase pressure on their population centers. Their resistance will standardize as they recognize optimal response patterns." But as the Vraxians intensified their attacks on major cities, something unexpected happened. Instead of fleeing, civilian populations organized into support networks. In Seoul, delivery motorcyclists formed improvised supply chains for medical equipment. In Toronto, construction workers converted building equipment into barricades and trap mechanisms. 8 watched as a Vraxian precision strike on a London military base missed its primary target because the humans had created a decoy installation, using techniques borrowed from World War II. Technology so outdated it didn't register properly on Vraxian sensors. "Their adaptations are becoming more effective, not less," 8 reported with growing concern. "They're learning our patterns while exhibiting none of their own." The Overmind pulsed with its first hint of uncertainty. "Continue the established invasion protocol. Their resistance cannot maintain coherence without centralized command." But as night fell across Earth's battle zones, the humans didn't retreat to regroup. They kept fighting, kept adapting, kept surprising, and in the perfect geometric formations of the Vraxian fleet, the first subtle signs of disarray began to appear. Day 37 of the invasion brought unexpected lessons for both sides. In the mountain villages of Nepal, where Vraxian forces had established a monitoring outpost, local guides led resistance fighters through passes the aliens' mapping systems hadn't detected. The Vraxians, with their reliance on perfect geographical data, couldn't comprehend how humans navigated by instinct and generational knowledge, rather than precise measurements. Dr. Eliza Chen studied the recovered fragments of a Vraxian communication device in her makeshift lab beneath Chicago's Natural History Museum. The museum itself was a bombed-out shell, but the underground research facilities remained intact, shielded by layers of concrete and, ironically, dinosaur fossils dense enough to block Vraxian scanners. "Their entire communication system operates on quantum entanglement," she explained to the assembled team of engineers and physicists. "But there's a vulnerability. They've never needed to encrypt their transmissions because no species they've encountered could access the quantum frequency they use. A former video game developer turned resistance communications expert leaned forward. So they're essentially broadcasting in the clear? Exactly, Chen said. They've never needed security because their technology was always superior. They can't conceive of a less advanced species creating workarounds. Across the Atlantic, in the flooded streets of Venice, Italian naval commandos had adapted centuries-old gondolier techniques to move silently through waterways, bypassing Vraxian sonic detection systems calibrated for engine noises. They successfully raided 3 supply depots using weapons crafted from salvaged alien metal, taking advantage of the fact that Vraxian sensors weren't programmed to detect their own technology used against them. In orbit, Subnexus 8 was compiling increasingly concerning reports for the Overmind. The humans employ strategies that contradict established military logic, 8 communicated. Their forces don't retreat when outnumbered. Instead, they fragment into smaller units that continue resistance independently. The Overmind's response carried a new frequency that approximated frustration. What maintains their cohesion without centralized direction? Unknown, 8 admitted. Their communication networks should be compromised, yet intelligence continues to spread between their resistant cells. They adapt to our tactics within hours, not the projected weeks. In the Australian outback, Aboriginal trackers guided special forces through seemingly empty desert to discover hidden Vraxian water processing stations. In Finnish forests, reindeer herders used paths unknown even to local governments to move medical supplies between isolated communities. And in the mountains of Peru, farmers who had never handled advanced technology were now repurposing alien power cells to electrify defensive perimeters around their villages. The Vraxian Tactical Analysis System, designed to identify patterns and predict responses, was failing. It couldn't process the seemingly random yet effective human adaptations that emerged without central planning. They should be competing for resources, 8 noted with genuine puzzlement. Instead, they share innovations freely between unrelated groups. The Overmind issued new directives. Begin cultural analysis. There must be some central organizing principle we're missing. But as the Vraxians searched for humanity's unifying factor, they remained blind to the truth that humans had evolved without one, and this very lack of standardization had become their greatest strength against an enemy that couldn't comprehend diversity as an advantage. The cognitive harmony pulse had been the Vraxians' masterstroke in 7 previous conquests, yet its failure against humanity marked a turning point in the conflict. In the aftermath, humans worldwide reported strange, shared experiences, flashes of knowledge not their own, insights into unfamiliar skills, and most importantly, glimpses into the Vraxian collective consciousness. Professor Nadia Okafor led the research team at the underground facility in Lagos that studied these effects. Monitors displayed brainwave patterns from volunteers who had experienced the strongest connections during the pulse event. The Vraxians didn't just fail to harmonize our minds, she explained to the International Science Coalition assembled via secure quantum channels Dr. Chen had established using modified alien technology. They inadvertently created a temporary human network. We shared knowledge across boundaries that normally take years to cross. A neuroscientist from Buenos Aires added, "We're seeing evidence that these connections haven't fully dissolved. People retain fragments of shared consciousness. Mathematicians suddenly understanding poetry, farmers intuitively grasping engineering principles." The implications were staggering. The pulse had accelerated human collaboration exponentially. In Montreal, a culinary student who had momentarily shared consciousness with a materials engineer developed an algae-based coating that could hide thermal signatures from Vraxian scanners. In Johannesburg, a retired music teacher who had connected with a quantum physicist now led a team creating sonic disruption patterns that interfered with Vraxian neural synchronization. More concerning for the aliens, humans had glimpsed the fundamental nature of the Vraxian mind. They now understood that the hive mind couldn't process true randomness. It created the illusion of unpredictability through complex algorithms, but actual chaos disrupted their cognitive functions. Subnexus 8 reported the alarming developments to the Overmind. The humans are deliberately introducing randomness into their tactics. They use cultural references our intelligence cannot decipher to coordinate attacks that appear chaotic, but contain hidden patterns. The latest example had occurred in Kyoto, where resistance fighters had coordinated their movements based on traditional tea ceremony sequences, creating attack patterns that seemed completely random to Vraxian observers, but were perfectly choreographed to everyone familiar with the ancient ritual. They hide meaning in cultural contexts we cannot parse, 8 continued. Their languages contain idioms, metaphors, and historical references that carry layers of meaning invisible to our translation systems. The Overmind's response vibrated with a new emotion, something close to worry. Deploy the cultural assimilation drones. We must understand their information architecture. But the drones, designed to absorb and categorize alien cultural knowledge, encountered an insurmountable problem. Human culture wasn't structured in logical hierarchies. It was a contradictory mess of competing ideas, beliefs that simultaneously complemented and opposed each other, art that deliberately broke its own rules, and knowledge systems that valued both rational thought and intuitive leaps. As the Vraxian, cultural analysis systems attempted to create a coherent model of human thought, they encountered endless paradoxes, religions that preached both peace and justified violence, political systems based on freedom that imposed constraints, scientific thinking that embraced both rigid methodology and creative speculation. The most sophisticated Vraxian cultural mapping system crashed, trying to reconcile these contradictions, while humans continued turning their cultural chaos into a weapon the aliens couldn't comprehend. The Vraxian pathogen had been engineered with terrifying precision, targeting what their scientists believed was the uniform human respiratory system. They hadn't accounted for humanity's vast genetic diversity, the result of evolving across different environments for hundreds of thousands of years. In her makeshift laboratory, hidden beneath Mumbai's sprawling Dharavi neighborhood, Dr. Priya Sharma studied cultures from resistant individuals. The room hummed with salvaged equipment and jury-rigged analysis tools, a testament to human adaptability. It's not just genetic resistance, she explained to her team of international researchers connected through encrypted channels. Our gut microbiomes play a crucial role. People with certain bacterial profiles show complete immunity. On the screens behind her, data flowed from labs in Kenya, Brazil, and South Korea, all reporting similar findings. Humanity's complex relationship with microorganisms, shaped by different diets and environments worldwide, had created defensive systems the Vraxians never anticipated. The aliens see us as uniform biological entities, said a microbiologist from Seoul. They don't understand that each human is an ecosystem, Dr. Sharma nodded. More importantly, we've identified 3 bacterial strains that actively neutralize the pathogen. We can cultivate these as probiotics and distribute them through food supplies. Meanwhile, in remote corners of the Amazon rainforest, indigenous healers were creating effective treatments using plant compounds that indigenous communities had used for respiratory ailments for generations. Their ethnobotanical knowledge, previously dismissed by mainstream medicine, now provided critical compounds that slowed the disease's progression. Through the resistance network, these treatments spread globally. Local production facilities emerged, adapting the formulas based on locally available plants with similar properties. What looked like disconnected efforts to the Vraxians was actually a massively distributed pharmaceutical development system, operating outside conventional channels. In orbit, Subnexus 8 delivered increasingly concerning reports to the Overmind. The pathogen's effectiveness decreases daily. Humans in infected zones show unexpected recovery patterns. They're developing treatments faster than our bioweapons division can adapt the pathogen. The Overmind's response carried notes of disbelief. Their medical technology is primitive. They lack unified research protocols. That appears to be their advantage, 8 replied. Their approaches are so varied that some inevitably succeed. They pursue thousands of treatment avenues simultaneously without central coordination. The concept violated everything the Vraxians understood about efficient research methodology. Their own biological warfare division operated through perfectly coordinated efforts. Each scientist assigned specific tasks that contributed to a unified approach. The human method seemed wasteful, disorganized, yet undeniably effective. 8 compiled reports from ground forces. Another pattern emerged. The humans weren't just treating the disease, they were developing immunity through exposure. Their immune systems, already diverse, were adapting to the pathogen in ways the Vraxians hadn't predicted. They're using our weapon to strengthen themselves, 8 reported with something approaching awe. Their biological systems embrace variation rather than perfectibility. The Overmind issued new directives. Cease biological warfare initiatives. Their diversity renders this approach counterproductive. It was the first directed mission that a standard Vraxian conquest strategy had failed against humanity. And across our Earth, as people continued sharing treatments through the global resistance network, many began to recognize an important truth. The very chaos of human existence that had often seemed like a weakness was proving to be their greatest strength, against an enemy that couldn't comprehend diversity as advantage. The abandoned electronics factory outside Bangalore had transformed into something the Vraxians couldn't categorize. It wasn't a traditional military facility, research lab, or manufacturing center. It was all of these simultaneously. Engineers from competing companies now collaborated freely, surrounded by disassembled alien technology and improvised human adaptations. Anya Patel, a former smartphone developer who now led the reverse engineering division, presented their latest breakthrough to an unlikely team of collaborators: a retired physics professor, 3 video game designers, and a teenage robotics champion. "We've identified the frequency patterns in their neural communications," she explained, displaying oscillating waveforms on a salvage display. The Vraxians maintain synchronization through continuous subspace pulses, but certain sound patterns, particularly polyrhythmic structures, create interference. The teenager, Kwame Osei, nodded excitedly. "The traditional drumming patterns from my grandfather's village in Senegal might work. They specifically use overlapping rhythms that create mathematical dissonance." This seemingly random connection between alien neural technology and centuries-old African musical traditions epitomized humanity's unique approach to innovation. Across the globe, similar unlikely collaborations produced breakthroughs daily. In Chile, copper miners with expert knowledge of sonic mapping collaborated with acoustics engineers to develop detection systems that could locate Vraxian underground facilities. In Iceland, geothermal energy specialists repurposed their drilling techniques to create weapons that could penetrate the aliens' crystalline armor. The Vraxian Analysis Division, tasked with understanding human technological development, struggled to make sense of this approach. Their own innovation followed careful incremental paths built on previous discoveries. The humans seemed to leap between unrelated fields, combining technologies in ways that defied logical progression. Subnexus 8 attempted to explain this phenomenon to the increasingly concerned Overmind. Their innovation processes appear random but produce effective results. They don't specialize uniformly. A weapon might be designed simultaneously by a military engineer, a marine biologist, and a chef, each contributing insights from their field. The Overmind's response carried notes of disbelief. Such methodology should produce inefficient, flawed results. Yet it doesn't, 8 acknowledged. Their distributed approach means thousands of potential solutions develop concurrently. Most fail, but those that succeed spread rapidly through their networks. The humans' greatest technological breakthrough came from the most unexpected source. The polyrhythmic disruption technology pioneered by Kwame and the Bangalore team evolved into portable harmony disruptors that could temporarily individualize Vraxian soldiers, breaking their connection to the hive mind. The first field test occurred in Marseille, when resistance fighters activated the devices during a Vraxian patrol. The results exceeded all expectations. The affected Vraxians didn't simply become confused. Some showed signs of emerging individual consciousness, momentarily freed from the Overmind's control. As reports of the technology's effectiveness spread through resistance channels, production facilities emerged globally. Each region adapted the design based on available materials and local musical traditions, creating variants that the Vraxians couldn't develop countermeasures against quickly enough. In orbit, the Overmind experienced an unfamiliar sensation as it processed 8's latest report. Humans would recognize it immediately. Fear. Not of defeat. The Vraxians still possessed superior firepower, but of something more profound. The chaotic human innovation approach wasn't just challenging their military advantage. It was threatening the very foundation of Vraxian identity by introducing the concept of individuality into their perfectly synchronized collective. The first defection happened quietly. A Vraxian communications specialist designated Nexus 27 Delta, assigned to monitor human internet traffic, failed to report for neural synchronization. Instead, it sent an unexpected message through channels the resistance had established. I wish to understand humor. Dr. Miguel Sanchez, leading the Cultural Outreach Initiative from a hidden facility beneath Barcelona, could hardly believe the transmission. They're reaching out to us, he told his team of linguists, psychologists, and cultural anthropologists. This confirms our theory that exposure to human culture is affecting their neural structure. The team accelerated Operation Renaissance, broadcasting carefully selected cultural content designed to stimulate individual thinking among the Vraxians. They transmitted everything from philosophical debates to comedy routines, from personal stories of transformation to collaborative art projects. Each broadcast targeted a specific aspect of individuality that the hive mind suppressed. Within weeks, more Vraxians made contact. A scout unit that had been studying human music reported experiencing unauthorized neural patterns when exposed to jazz improvisation. A research team analyzing human literature found themselves developing distinct interpretations of the texts they studied. Professor Lin Wei, a cognitive psychologist working with Dr. Sanchez, identified the pattern. It's not just any culture that affects them. It's our expressions of individuality within collective frameworks. Jazz musicians improvising together, writers creating unique works that build on shared traditions, even team sports where individual excellence enhances group performance. These concepts were revolutionary to Vraxians, whose society had eliminated the tension between individual and collective for millennia. Their unified consciousness had brought them tremendous technological advances and perfect societal harmony, but at the cost of innovation and adaptation. The breakthrough came when a high-ranking Vraxian scientist, secretly developing an independent identity, contacted the resistance with critical intelligence. The Overmind fears human diversity because our species once possessed individuality. Our history includes a suppressed period when we existed as connected individuals rather than a singular consciousness. This revelation transformed the conflict. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. They were potentially liberating a species from self-imposed neural constraints. The Vraxian scientist who chose the name Seeker shared details of the Overmind's growing instability. Your cultural transmissions are creating resonance patterns that awaken dormant neural structures in our brains. Some of us are remembering what it meant to be individuals within a connected whole. Subnexus 8, whose own exposure to human culture had created subtle shifts in their neural patterns, reported the concerning developments to the increasingly fragmented Overmind. The contamination spreads faster than we can isolate affected units. The humans appear to understand aspects of our neurology that even we have forgotten. The Overmind's response came with alarming gaps and inconsistencies. Increase neural synchronization frequencies. Isolate all units showing signs of individualization. Prepare memory purge protocols. But the individualization process had progressed too far. Throughout the Vraxian fleet, small groups began questioning orders, experiencing emotions long suppressed by the collective consciousness, and sharing these experiences through covert channels. As Earth entered the second year of resistance, the conflict evolved from a straightforward invasion into something unprecedented. A war fought simultaneously on military, technological, biological, and now cultural and psychological fronts. The Vraxians had come to conquer a primitive species, but instead found themselves facing an existential crisis of identity as humanity's greatest strength individual consciousness within collective action, proved contagious. The global counteroffensive, codenamed Mosaic, reflected everything the Vraxians couldn't comprehend about humanity. Rather than a unified attack plan, Earth's forces developed what military historians would later call coherent chaos, thousands of seemingly unrelated operations that formed an emergent pattern visible only when viewed as a whole. In the central command bunker beneath Geneva, General Lucia Montero surveyed the holographic display showing operations unfolding worldwide. Unlike traditional command centers with clear hierarchies, this room contained an unprecedented mix of military strategists, civilian specialists, and even representatives from the growing faction of individualized Vraxians. Traditional military doctrine would never produce this plan, she explained to the assembled observers. We're not just attacking their forces, we're attacking their cognitive framework. The display showed seemingly random actions occurring globally. Korean fishing fleets deploying sonar disruption devices while dancing to traditional music, whose rhythms interfered with Vraxian communications. Moroccan desert fighters using ancient navigation techniques to guide strike teams through sand corridors invisible to alien sensors. Australian Aboriginal trackers leading special forces through dreamtime paths that somehow evaded Vraxian detection grids. Dr. Kaido Yamamoto, the quantum game theorist who had helped design the strategy, pointed to emergent patterns in the display. Each action appears independent but creates ripple effects that amplify other operations. We're exploiting the fact that the Vraxian mind cannot process true unpredictability. The Resistance had recruited unlikely tacticians, chess grandmasters, improvisational theater directors, chaos mathematicians, and even weather forecasters, to design attack patterns that defied algorithmic prediction. The resulting strategy resembled nothing in military history, a massively distributed network of operations with no single point of failure and no discernible pattern. Seeker, the Vraxian scientist who had defected to humanity, studied the unfolding operations with fascination. Your species fights as we never could, simultaneously unified and individualistic. Each unit acts independently, yet somehow maintains coherence with the whole. The centerpiece of the offensive emerged over the skies of Tanzania, where a combined force of human pilots and individualized Vraxians executed an impossible aerial maneuver based on startling murmuration patterns. Their ships moved in flowing organic formations that the Vraxian defense systems couldn't track. The algorithms kept searching for geometric patterns that didn't exist. Sub-Nexus 8, watching from the command ship, experienced something unprecedented in Vraxian history: tactical uncertainty. The Overmind, receiving 8's confused reports, issued increasingly fragmented directives as it attempted to predict human movements, using models that no longer applied. They move like water, 8 reported, struggling to maintain neural synchronization as doubt spread through the collective. Their patterns contained too many variables for prediction. The Overmind's response came with alarming delays. Identify the central command structure. Locate their strategic nexus. But there was no central nexus to find. Earth's resistance had evolved into something that defied Vraxian understanding, a complex adaptive system where leadership emerged organically, strategies evolved through distributed intelligence, and coherence arose from shared purpose rather than hierarchical control. As the counteroffensive gained momentum, breaching the outer defenses of the primary Vraxian command ships, the Overmind experienced true tactical blindness for the first time in its 50,000-year existence. It could no longer predict what humanity would do next because humans themselves didn't know until they did it, each individual contributing to an emergent strategy that was simultaneously planned and spontaneous, coordinated and chaotic. The Vraxian command ship hovered above Earth's atmosphere, its crystalline structure refracting sunlight into prismatic patterns across the sky. Inside, the Overmind initiated its final protocol, a complete neural reset designed to purge all individualized Vraxians and restore perfect collective harmony. The contamination has reached critical levels. It communicated to all synchronized units. We must preserve our evolutionary perfection. Commence purification sequence. But Seeker and the growing coalition of individualized Vraxians had anticipated this response. Working with human neuroscientists, they had developed a counter-signal derived from mapping the neural patterns of both species. As the reset pulse began to spread through the fleet, they broadcast their own signal, not to block the Overmind's command, but to transform it. Dr. Eliza Chen watched the transmission data from the monitoring station in Chicago. "It's working," she whispered as the readings shifted. "The reset isn't erasing individuality, it's distributing it." Across the Vraxian fleet, an unprecedented transformation unfolded. The reset pulse, modified by the counter-signal, didn't eliminate the emerging individual consciousness, but instead integrated it into a new form of collective awareness. Billions of distinct personalities suddenly blossomed within the hive mind, each maintaining their unique perspective while remaining connected to the whole. On the command ship, Subnexus 8 experienced the change most profoundly. For the first time, 8 perceived themselves not as merely a component of the Overmind, but as an individual entity with unique thoughts, experiences, and emotions, yet still connected to the collective consciousness in a way humans could only imagine. "We remember now," 8 communicated to the human command center. "Our species began as connected individuals. We chose unity over chaos, but lost something essential in the process. You have reminded us what it means to be both one and many." "General," Montero received the transmission with cautious optimism. "Are we still at war?" The response came not from a singular voice, but from a chorus of distinct personalities sharing a collective medium. "We came to assimilate what we thought was a primitive species, but instead discovered that your apparent evolutionary chaos is actually your greatest strength." Within hours, Vraxian ships worldwide ceased offensive operations. The transformed collective requested not surrender terms, but cultural exchange protocols. They sought to understand how humanity maintained cohesion despite their chaotic diversity, how they balanced individual expression with collective action. Professor Nadia Okafor, addressing the United Nations emergency session, explained the profound implications. "The Vraxians evolved toward perfect unity, while we evolved toward creative diversity. Each path has strengths and weaknesses. Together we may discover a third path that incorporates the best of both approaches." The next morning, people worldwide witnessed an extraordinary sight. Vraxian ships reconfiguring their crystalline structures into organic, flowing patterns that mirrored natural formations like coral reefs and forest canopies. The transformation reflected their internal evolution from rigid uniformity to dynamic harmony. Earth's defenders transitioned from resistance fighters to cultural ambassadors as humanity helped the Vraxians navigate their evolutionary leap. Research centers worldwide began exploring technologies that could help humans achieve greater connection without sacrificing individuality, while Vraxians shared insights into collective consciousness that expanded human understanding of the mind itself. The solar system became home to a remarkable experiment, neither fully human nor Vraxian, but a new civilization exploring the balance between unity and diversity, collective purpose and individual expression. What began as an invasion had transformed into perhaps the greatest evolutionary leap for both species. The discovery that true resilience comes not from perfect uniformity or complete individualism, but from the creative tension between them.